families don't mind, I would like to first, before I share with you a couple of personal thoughts, speak on your behalf to this extraordinarily large assembled crowd. On your behalf. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past couple of days, I've met quite a few of you. You come from all around the country, north, south, east, and west. You came in buses and vans and cars and pickup trucks and on motorcycles. Some of you actually had your cars towed out of that muddy lot. I'm sorry, I took the space that had the grass on it. Nobody towed me out. But I think your presence today means almost as much to the family, perhaps as much as the memorial itself. Some of us, for whatever reason, got a bunch of VIP badges, and you're the VIPs. Because many of you have been here for a couple of days. I met a couple that were in the Capitol building. They were elected officials. They've been in the Capitol building on September 11th, and then this is their third time back. They understood that your loved ones died so they could live. And so I just wanted to say on behalf of the family to all of you, your very presence is a powerful message of comfort and understanding and love for this incredible group of assembled families. And on their behalf, I thank you. There's a line from an old poem that I would like to share with you. Grieve not, nor speak of me with tears, but laugh and talk of me as if I were beside you there. And so to you, our 40 heroes, on this special September morning, may I take a few moments to speak of you and to you. As you sit beside us here. Beside your family and your friends and your fellow citizens, upon soft and sacred earth, now under peaceful skies, throughout a land where your last loving embrace of your nation profoundly moved our hearts 10 years ago, and still does 10 years on. Grieve not, nor speak of me with tears, but laugh and talk of me as if I were beside you there. We still grieve. It's still hard at times not to speak of you with tears. It's still hard at times to laugh. We would rather share a laugh. But with you beside us here this September 11th, we continue to celebrate your lives and your legacy. Now, we suspect that you may not be comfortable when we call you heroes, but humor us. For you are heroes, without a doubt. We know that Providence is now your peace. Pride in you is ours. 10 years ago today, many of us stood upon a nearby field. We were angry, and we were heartbroken. And as the days and weeks and months unfolded, your story to us became known. And we wondered, would we? Could we? Had we been in your place, shown the same resolve, the same selflessness, the same astonishing valor. We wondered in those early days, was this uniquely American or uniquely you? Or a unique combination? As we have grown to know your parents and grandparents, your spouses, your siblings, your children, and all who have loved you over these many years, what we do understand better now is that those 40 extraordinary heroes were enriched and loved and made stronger by 40 extraordinary families. It's no wonder to all of us that you fought for them and for people you never knew. Grieve not, nor speak of me with tears, but laugh and talk of me as if I were beside you there. 40 heroes as you sit beside us here. We wonder if you are surprised that 10 years later we are even prouder of you and even more grateful. It is not a surprise to us. Perhaps because as each day and year passes, as we have come to better understand 9/11 as a new time in American security and a new chapter in American history, we now know as a country that moments and people come through our lives to remind us to cherish what we have and to do all we can to protect it. 10 years on, your actions still call to us. They remind us to be our best selves, to take care of one another, to honor and preserve the sheer will, the magnificence, and the fortitude of the American spirit. 10 years on, remain an emblem of America's great glory. 230 plus years of liberty and self-determination, demonstrated at its highest regard and at its highest cost. You stood first and fast against those who sought your fellow citizens' harm. You signaled to all the world, Americans do not live in fear. We live in freedom, and will never let that freedom go. You said with great courage, what generations have brought together, let no one put asunder. Your actions, the message it sent to all of us, helped us to remember one September and many Septembers more, that America is and will always be a resilient nation. We know that you would expect of your country nothing less. Tragedies teach us, but they do not stop us. We are still the freest, most blessed nation in this treasured world. And we will long honor that role with the memory and guidance of 40 good shepherds. Grieve not, nor speak of me with tears, but laugh, talk of me, as if I was with you there. 40 heroes. As you sit beside us here, we pledge to you that we will ensure that future generations know your names and your remarkable story, just as we are privileged to do. We are honored to share the legacy of men and women who made a difference, whose lives had great meaning, and who remain deeply missed. May God continue to bless you, your beloved families, and your grateful nation. It is now my pleasure to introduce Gordy Felt, the president of the Families of Flight 93. In addition to the loss of his brother, Edward felt. Gordy has been a very strong, as we all know, and compassionate presence for hundreds of others like 93 family members. Gordy lives with his own family in New York, where he runs, and I spend some time as chairman of the National Organization on Disability. He runs a summer camp for special needs children. Many of you here know the deep respect and tireless energy he has given these many years. It is boundless. That's what it needs, and what we so greatly appreciate. So it is my honor to thank him for his service, that he will tell you he needs some things. But we ought to offer it anyway, and welcome him to the podium.
Distinguished guests, families, friends, and all of you that have come this morning to pay tribute to the crew and passengers of Flight 93. This is not an easy morning. The Flight 93 National Memorial, now officially dedicated, is on its way to completion. The sacred ground is safe and secure, so that the final resting place Flight 93's passengers and crew will be preserved for generations to come. Roads have been built, tributes collected, oral histories recorded, and thousands of concerned citizens join us today as we mark the 10th anniversary of September 11th. Yet, I cannot get past the fact that I only wish I could have gotten to know each and every one of you under different circumstances. We lost too much those 10 years ago. The anguish of September 11th continues to overwhelm, and many still seek answers to questions whose answers remain elusive. Why and for what purpose was this battle forced upon the 40 passengers and crew of Flight 93, who were taken from us with such violence that morning? Nothing frightens me more than the phrase, "Time heals all pain." Do we as individuals or as a community truly want to be fully healed if the end result involves the complete elimination of the pain that links us to all that we lost that morning? We want our memories eroded by the passage of time. Over these past 10 years, I've come to greatly appreciate the term process. Whether it's the healing process or the memorialization process, it's the process or the steps that one takes to move forward that provides results. September 12th, 2001, we began healing. It was slow at first, and a process indescribably different for each family member, first responder, citizen in Somerset County, and all those deeply affected by the terrorist attacks on the United States. Those early post-September 11th days saw a renewed spirit of unity throughout communities across our country. Here in Somerset County, parks and homes were open. Volunteers called to action, and some of the best home cooking helped sustain our bodies and souls. Families, the first responders, and all those hurt by the events of September 11th. The healing had begun at the very site of our loss. This healing process teaches us many lessons. Most importantly, we learn that one can be too deeply affected by profound tragedy to ever be considered healed or whole again. Those of us that lost family members learned that our most cherished memories of our loved ones are now forever linked to strong and painful emotion. Yet the healing process also teaches us that we can continue to move forward with our lives. While we can never be healed, we can embrace the healing process, and in doing so, allow ourselves to remember. We can productively channel anger and frustration so that they do not consume us. The healing process offers opportunities to immerse ourselves in a lifestyle that honors the heroic actions of individuals lost on September 11th. Let us not allow time to heal all of our pain. Let us never forget the horror of September 11th and the difficult lessons we learned that morning 10 years ago. But rather, let us cherish the painful memories of all those that were lost. Remember how we as a nation came together in the aftermath of the terrorist attacks and responded as one people, unified, to meet the challenge thrust upon us. We cannot escape the painful reality of history, but we can choose to be inspired by that reality. Here at the Flight 93 National Memorial, we hold fast to memories of those that perished and their collective acts of heroism. This site will forever stand as a tribute to 40 individuals who, under the most horrific conditions, chose to stand as one and fight. They lost their lives. They won the battle. Our painful remembrance honors them and keeps them alive in our hearts.
And so it was, on that blue sky day 10 years ago, that some of our precious fellow humans took to the air in wonderful flying machines. Machines that were created through an entire century of technological achievements that represented the very best of the human spirit. Perhaps filled with a sense of anticipation, as most of us are when we begin a journey. Our fellow citizens, friends, and loved ones maybe even felt a bit of elation as their aircraft wheels left the runways in Boston, in Newark, and at Dulles. They had all embarked on flights that morning which spanned our vast continent and a great nation built here. A country founded on the most noble ambitions of humanity: life, liberty, and the peaceful pursuit of happiness. It is to our enduring regret and sorrow that the journey for these loved ones and friends was to an unexpected and different destination that day. Instead of traveling to an important business meeting, a long-planned vacation spot, or to a gathering of family and friends, these special people unknowingly embarked on a journey to witness and to confront the very darkest side of humanity. In the long course of human history on this planet, we have labored to create a civilization that intensely values life. We have endured enormous sacrifices to finally achieve a form of government that protects and even celebrates our freedom to worship as we choose, to speak and write what we think, and to peacefully pursue activities in commerce, science, education, and the arts that serve to advance the human condition. We believe deeply in the goodness of our cherished life here on planet Earth. And as each of us gets lost in our daily peaceful pursuits, we sometimes allow ourselves to trust that all humans who share our planetary home also value the preciousness of life. The events of September 11, 2001 remind us that this innocent trust is unfortunately a trust misplaced. Human civilization in its entirety has not yet progressed to the day when the life of every innocent man, woman, and child is universally valued protected, and treasured by all who walk the earth. We so wish this were not true. Our hope and faith in the goodness of humanity leads us to often ignore the very awful truth that there are those among us who intend to do us harm and rob us of our lives and liberty. This awful truth is so abhorrent that it pains us to think about it and speak about it. The degree of terror and horror that some humans can inflict on others is indeed unthinkable and unspeakable. But today, we must think and speak about it. To do otherwise is a disservice to our family members and friends who on September 11, 2001, directly witnessed and confronted that awful truth. A truth that reminds us that we have much work to do in building an enduring civilization. A civilization that does not ultimately perish by our own actions. To survive as a species, we simply must value, respect, and protect every innocent human life that dwells on this planet. On this day, we remember those who died in the blink of an eye, not knowing the cause or source of the instant catastrophe that took their innocent lives at the Twin Towers, at the World Trade Center, at the Pentagon, and in the aircraft that crashed into these three massive structures. We remember the rescue workers who rushed in to help their fellow humans in their time of need and consequently sacrificed their own lives in their heroic effort to save others. And today, here at this treasured new memorial, we remember those very special people aboard Flight 93. Unlike others who perished that day aboard hijacked aircraft and in targeted buildings, the citizens aboard Flight 93 had precious knowledge about their dangerous circumstance and the deadly intent of their captors. On board that flight were people just like all of us gathered here today. In so many ways, they were us. Among them were cherished family members and beloved friends and co-workers. Stepping on board Flight 93 with her fellow passengers that morning at Newark was a 27-year-old rising star at my own company, Elizabeth Wainio. Recently promoted to head up all Discovery Channel stores in the New York area, Liz Wainio had eagerly set off for a meeting with her colleagues outside San Francisco to make plans for our national retail effort for the year-end holiday season. Bright, energetic, and cheerful, Liz was obviously in love with life and with all those around her. Like the crew members and her fellow passengers on Flight 93, Liz represented the very best of humanity and our dreams and peaceful aspirations. The passengers and crew members aboard Flight 93 had the momentary gifts of time and connection. As their hijacked aircraft turned southward, with the bright eastern sunlight streaming through the left windows, the men and women of Flight 93 reached out to make vital connections to those they loved. In those precious telephone conversations, they gained critical knowledge about the horrible fate of the other hijacked planes that morning and the resulting tremendous loss of life on the ground in symbolic buildings that were filled with thousands of innocent lives. And here they were, heading south, bound for buildings in the nation's capital that represented and symbolized democracy, freedom, and liberty. The citizens aboard Flight 93 found themselves aboard a deadly missile aimed at the very heart of the nation and the hearts of thousands of innocent lives. In those somber and anxious moments when the ominous knowledge of their fate spread through the cabin, the passengers and crew aboard Flight 93 had to make life-impacting choices. They had to overcome every instinct for self-preservation that must have genetically commanded them to just sit still, call attention to yourself, and hope for the best. But they continued to reach out through their telephones to learn and to connect with loved ones that they left behind, and they made a plan. Liz Wainio reached her stepmother in Baltimore. In addition to learning more about the fate of the other hijackings that morning, Liz had the precious opportunity to share her message of love for her stepmother, her family members, and her co-workers. And she and her stepmother had a brief but profound quiet time together on the phone. sharing a gaze at the same brilliant blue sky that covered and embraced them both. And then Liz broke the silence by saying, "I have to go. They're breaking into the cockpit with a love." What a fitting sight for a national memorial that we are gathered at today. It is on this hallowed piece of earth that the best ideals and most courageous aspirations of humanity came to rest after an heroic struggle in the air. These were not people who would sit still in their seats and cower in the face of those who would destroy life and the values we hold most dear. Instead of accepting a fate and control by the darkest forces of humanity, these citizens rose in defiance from their seats to directly confront and combat a vicious element of the unthinkable terrorism that had struck their nation that day in September. Although every one of their lives were lost in the fight for control of the cockpit, that plane, with its nearly full load of fuel, never reached the target selected by the terrorists. This we know. Others are alive today because a bold group of Americans rose from their seats. It would take nearly 10 years for the brave men and women of our military to track down and extinguish the evil, deviant mind which originated the terror that struck our nation on September 11th, 2001. In the intervening years, many brave men and women in our armed forces and in the armed forces of our allies around the world have sacrificed their lives in order to bring the world a freedom from terrorism. To all of these courageous, valiant humans, we continue to give our deepest and the most enduring gratitude in memorial parks and monuments across this nation and around the world. But today, on this ground in Pennsylvania, we have dedicated a valuable new memorial that honors ordinary citizens who took very extraordinary and defiant actions in the face of terrorism. We will always remember their values and their courage. The men and women aboard Flight 93 have given us precious insight into the true nature of the human spirit, a spirit that is compassionate, loving, bold, and sacrificial. Although the darkest side of humanity was certainly aboard Flight 93 that day, the very best of our humanity was on board as well. The goodness, decency, and bravery of humanity shined through the darkness on that day, on that historic flight. Today is a day that we must talk about the unspeakable, and we must again contemplate the unthinkable. There are ugly truths about the world which our friends and loved ones on Flight 93 had to witness and directly confront. In order for our civilization to advance, all of us must collectively confront and address the ignorance and hatred that is at the root of global terrorism. In addition to vigorously defending our freedoms, we must dedicate ourselves to using the great communications resources of our civilization and global education efforts so that future generations of humans do not have to fall victim to deviant thinking that threatens innocent human life. And we must always be mindful of the courage that must sometimes be immediately summoned to protect the loss of innocent human life. The passengers and crew members aboard Flight 93 left us with a shining example of what is best about human life and why it is so worth protecting. We love them all, and we miss them deeply. We remember their lives, their ambitions, their goodness, and their sacrifice. The story of Flight 93, told here at this new national memorial, will forever remind us that we must indeed think about the unthinkable. We must speak about the unspeakable. And at critical moments, when all that we hold dear in life is threatened, we must rise from our seats. Thank you all very much.